Hello and welcome back to the channel. Amber here, and season 2 is finally upon us. Today I'm so excited to talk about the highlights of the first 3 episodes, so let's start out with episode 1. There are 3 major plot lines in this episode: Moiraine and Lan dealing with the effects of her no longer being able to channel, our characters at the White Tower going through their own personal struggles, and Perrin, Loial, and the Shienarans hunting for the Horn of Valere. There is a sense of isolation for each major character, and we begin with a time skip from season 1's finale at the Battle of Valdara. The first scene begins with a little girl and a gathering of cloaked figures aligned with the side of the Dark One. And here we have an assortment of characters from different nations and backgrounds: an Aes Sedai, a White Cloak, a Shiennaran soldier, a Seanchan woman, a tinker, and Padan Fain. And lastly, an unnamed man from season 1 who later calls himself one of the Forsaken. And the message is clear here. Our heroes have enemies from every background imaginable, and they are all hunting them. So viewers should be keeping an eye out for sabotage and betrayal at every turn of the story. My favorite location this episode begins with Moiraine Damodred carrying water. Fan favorite Varen Sedai of the Brown Aja makes her first show appearance with Adeleas. And one of my favorite details about this part of the story is how intricate the set design is because of how well it reflects Varen's Brown Aja. Knowledge and research is the backbone, so the room Moiraine spends her time in is full of candlesticks and stacks of books, maps, magnifying glasses, an assortment of documents, geodes, crystals, and this location fills a very important role for Moiraine because she is gathering intelligence. In the books, this plot point serves as a space for her to understand the prophecies associated with the Dragon Reborn. How does this chosen one reach his destiny? What are the signs that the final battle of good versus evil has come? It's really good to see it included because in the show, it also works as a way to propel Moiraine forward. When channelers are cut off from the One Power, they lose all will to live unless they find a cause, something to drive them to pursuing a life worth living. Just because she's been excommunicated from the White Tower doesn't mean she's going to give up her quest. It's this type of drive that is actually keeping her alive and focusing her energy. Our next location is the White Tower, and it is bustling with life. As Egwene cleans, she looks longingly at the Amerlin's gown. Egwene is the epitome of aspiration. She's always had big dreams, and if Siuan Sanche, a young fisherman's daughter, can rise to the highest position in the known world, maybe she can too? She's hardworking and diligent. One of my favorite little touches is when she passes by a group of novices looking onward at the warders. Egwene pauses for a moment to watch, and this is such a nice little nod to the book. I really enjoyed the kitchen scene with Egwene because it shows her contrast with Nynaeve. Egwene is diligent and puts her whole heart into doing the work that is asked of her, but Nynaeve, on the other hand, is defiant. She's not here because she wants to become an Aes Sedai. She's here to protect Egwene. She doesn't trust the Aes Sedai, and she has good reason, because the White Tower can be looked at in 2 different ways. A shining city where women can become powerful and help serve the world they live in for the better. Or a political stronghold that asserts dominance and bulldozes anyone beneath them. Both things are true in this world, and Egwene and Nynaeve have very different viewpoints, and neither are wrong. Nynaeve also has something called block. It's a phenomenon that happens to channelers that can't access the One Power. It's usually a subconscious wall that prevents them from channeling, and Nynaeve cannot access the One Power unless she is very angry. And Liandrin doesn't want to help her out of the goodness of her heart. Liandrin sees Nynaeve as a weapon, proving that Nynaeve isn't totally wrong in her opinions of the Aes Sedai. We then move to Perrin, who is traveling with Loial and the Shienarans, who are hunting for the Horn of Valere, a legendary relic that can call forth an army to fight for whoever blows it. And also, small shout out to Uno Nomesta and actor Guy Roberts here. He is another fan favorite, so it is always delightful to see him go on a profanity-laced tirade. The new tracker is introduced, and it's Elias Makira, and Perrin seems to have some mystical powers awakening inside of him. I think the way that the show handled it was well done. Perrin is receiving viewings of events that have already happened from an outside source, and it puts to rest any uncertainties that I had about how the show would portray his new abilities. It looks pretty seamless and almost has a dreamlike quality to it. We move back to Moiraine and Lan, and this plot has been very hard to watch because the relationship is suffering under the loss of the warder bond. She meets with a smuggler named Bail Doman, and she starts to piece together a puzzle. There are two big revelations here. The item he gives her is Heartstone, known to be indestructible, but something is causing it to crack, and the poem written on the Heartstone is a clue. Secondly, Bail Doman is being chased by Myrddraal because he has something they want. Egwene meets with Alanna to discuss juggling two things at once, and I caught a very small Easter egg here. Alanna is a borderlander from Arafel, and she is graceful, lounging on the propped-up pillows. Egwene is from the Two Rivers, and sitting on the floor isn't a normal thing for her, and it takes her a moment to get adjusted. This is something that happens in the books, and it's really fun to see a small detail like this included. Liandrin then assaults Nynaeve with the One Power and exposes a way to overcome her difficulty channeling: anger. The show has done a really great job of bringing Liandrin to life. In the books, she's a touch one-dimensional, but in the show, actress Kate Fleetwood has some of the best lines and monologues in the series. We move to the Shinarans, and Perrin receives some wisdom from Ingtar. He tells Perrin to explore why Padan Fain was driven to bring the Trollocs to the Two Rivers. Perrin has a growing rage inside of him, but perhaps Padan Fain has a reason for doing what he did. Can Perrin find a way to humanize Padan Fain? Is Padan Fain truly evil for the sake of being evil, or is there something more? Moving back to the White Tower, I have to say that this was one of my favorite overall moments of the episode. Our characters from the Two Rivers are for the first time all alone, fitting with the title, A Place of Solitude. Mat is missing, Rand is presumed dead, and Nynaeve and Egwene receive a letter from Perrin. It's Beltane, the anniversary of the day that all their lives were turned upside down. Perrin makes an analogy in his letter. If you stand alone with a shield, much of your body is exposed, but if you stand in a group covering each other with your shields, nothing can touch any of you. It made me think of us, all of us, and how together we face the impossible, but now in our separate corners of the world, every day feels exposed, which is a long-winded way of saying, I miss you both. And I think it's a really touching moment. The great pattern of the Wheel of Time has a need for many, not just the Dragon Reborn. Each person has an important role to play, and everyone's lives are going to change dramatically. We have just reached the jump-off point where we will see our young characters coming into their own destiny. It's a perfect way to round out the end of the first episode. There's a little bit of closure here, and it's needed. We then move to a prison cell, and Mat is being held captive by Liandrin. She's psychologically torturing him, making him believe his friends have forgotten about him. Perrin lights a lantern and just isn't ready to take off his wedding ring. Mat holds a lantern, Nynaeve comforts a crying Egwene, and promises not to leave her. Mat plans a prison break, and the women place a lantern on the windowsill for Rand, whom they believe is dead. But Rand is definitely alive. The climax of the episode happens as Lan goes to bring Moiraine dinner and finds her gone. She is set out on her own and is attacked by multiple Myrddraal. She gets into a fighter stance and swipes dirt in a motion with her foot. And I have to ask, is this her tell? A nervous habit? Amazon Prime, please confirm. She manages to kill one because Moiraine is no porcelain doll. She is swarmed, and Lan has a fun fight sequence, and actor Daniel Henney really delivers. He's willing to die for Moiraine, bond or not. This moment shocked me a little bit because Moiraine isn't a trained fighter, but for the sake of full-blown theatrics, I am very happy that Rosamund Pike got to kill a Fade. If I were her, I would also want to kill a Fade. Varen Sedai arrives in the nick of time, and another fun aspect to this scene is we are seeing more innovative ways of using the One Power. They aren't just firebombing the Myrddraal. Varen first stuns them with percussive sound. The Myrddraal have no eyes, so this would be really disruptive. Then she delivers heat and light to her warder Tomas's sword, and he charges and attacks. It's a nice little nod to duality here, good versus evil, darkness versus light. It also makes a strategic difference because it disables the Myrddraal's advantage of using shadows. And the last words of the episode come from Lan. What aren't you telling me? The show is off to a really great start, and we move forward with episode 2. We move to Kyrian, and Selene has entered the picture, and she and Rand are in a relationship. There is no backstory and no lead up. For the Selene fans, this might be a bit of a disappointment, but I'm glad the show is speeding it up. Later in the episode, Selene talks about a former love, and she knows that no one else could ever hold that type of power over her again. It's an interesting bit of dialogue knowing her backstory. And again, I think the visuals have gotten a massive upgrade this season, and I really enjoy the 4-gate set. It is loud and dusty, and we get a view of the scaffolding on the topless towers, another great little Easter egg for the book fans. Now, the Kyrian set might be my favorite so far, and it's magnified as we move within the inner city because everything changes. It's clean and quiet, and the costumes are everything I would expect from the wealthy upper class. It's really immersive, and it's all information straight from the books. I couldn't be happier. Now, this might be controversial, but despite it having absolutely nothing to do with the books, I thought the hospital plot was really enjoyable and maybe my favorite from the episode. Errol is a really fun character, and the interactions builds a picture of the history in the city and of the Aiel War. It also explains why Rand has cut his hair. He's currently a caretaker for a war veteran who fought against a race of red-haired warriors. It just makes sense Rand would shave his head. We also have dialogue that hints to Rand learning more sword forms with Errol, which was desperately needed after season 1. There were deleted scenes of Rand training with Lan. Our boy needs to become a blade master fast, and while I would rather see him training than hearing about it, this was probably the best option considering we only have 8 episodes and things need to move along. The tower plotline resumes. My favorite segment of this Tar Valon plot is the introduction of Elaine Tricond, and Kira Coveney is absolute perfection as the daughter heir of Andor. The line of dialogue where she says, "They say some of the greatest pairings of the history of the White Tower are formed between novices in adjacent rooms." And it had me choked up a little bit because Elaine is such an important character to the books, and the relationships that she forms within the story are incredibly impactful. This marks the very beginning of her story, and I really cannot wait to see what she brings to season 2. I'm so happy to finally see this character brought to life. I love it so much. She also brings up the name Cadsuane Liandrin, which is extremely exciting because it could be a hint that the character will be brought into the show much earlier than her book introduction. So maybe we should be keeping an eye on if her name pops up again. We also have sides being drawn in terms of Nynaeve. Liandrin and Shiriam Sadai are cavalier, and despite the dangers, believe that she is ready to take her accepted test, fully knowing that failure inside the arches will result in death. Ilana believes the pattern is giving the side of light weapons in the form of strong channelers, which also speaks to how some of the Aes Sedai see these women. They're tools for war. Another fun observation from this episode is Nynaeve refers to Aes Sedai by their first name without the honorific Sedai at the end. And I love this because it speaks to her total disregard for authority when she doesn't believe respect is due. The big shocker and plot twist of this episode is Nynaeve's secret ops mission following Liandrin to North Harbor, where it is revealed that Liandrin Sedai has a child, and her child is about 80 years old from the looks of it. I can see this being a point of contention with book purists, but I think it's a great change. Aging up Liandrin doesn't really change much of her backstory, but instead could flesh out her behaviors and motivations better. Watching your loved ones age and die while you do not is dehumanizing. You would become more callous and closed off to the world. less human. Liandrin isn't just mean, she's broken. As of right now, I give this change the seal of approval. She has big secrets and secrets worth hiding. Min is also revealed to be imprisoned next to Mat's cell, and she hears him digging an escape route. She calls him a possum for scratching up her walls, and what a missed opportunity. Imagine if she would have called him Badger instead. When Min enters his cell, she receives a viewing of Mat. The images she sees is of Mat stabbing Rand with the Shadar Logoth dagger, and this feels like a very good theory crafting moment. In the books, this never happens, and we know Min's viewings always come true. The only moment that I can think of is something that happens in Book 2, The Great Hunt, where everyone goes through the portal stones and live alternate versions of their lives, and Mat comes out sick, telling Rand he would never betray him, hinting that within the Flickerverse, Mat did something to harm Rand. I always thought it would be very unlikely that we would see the portal stones in the show, but this moment has me questioning it, and it's the only instance I can point to that goes along with Min's viewing here in the show. Anyways, Moiraine's plot has many interesting moments this episode, but for me, the big one is her interaction with Varen, where Varen guesses that one of the Two Rivers boys is the Dragon Reborn. Can Varen be trusted? She knows a lot about the prophecies when no one else does, hinting to non-book readers that she is a character you should definitely keep your eye on. I am so excited to finally see the brown Aja represented in the story. The tension between Lan and Moiraine builds up and continues forward, and we get a wonderful little backstory based on the Wheel of Time prequel novel, New Spring. If any of this sounds interesting to viewers, I highly recommend this book for a deeper dive into the Lan and Moiraine dynamic. But Moiraine leaves him behind, saying that he failed her and that she was wrong about everything, that the Forsaken are awakening. The end of the episode is fairly action-packed, with loyal Perrin and the Shynarans being attacked by the Seanchan and dragged out of their beds. Perrin confronts his struggle with violence when Loyal is roped up, and I love the Ogier and I love Loyal, and I especially love seeing Loyal go feral with Ogier rage. The fight choreography was pretty good, specifically the Shynaran sword fighting. And the last plot twist of the episode is Rand meeting Logain in the sanitarium as his new caretaker, and it's a perfect little cliffhanger. Overall, I thought this episode was good. There's a fair amount of action and backstory, even though at this point in the story, we are mostly just setting the stage and doing a lot of character work and world building. The two new character introductions of Elaine and Selene are a big draw to the episode, and both were handled really well. With episode 3, Nynaeve is whisked away for her accepted test. It will bring her face to face with her greatest fears. No one knows if what happens within the arches are real or fabricated. The nature of the arches themselves is a mystery. No one really knows why they were created or what their original use was. But as Nynaeve agrees to go in, Liandrin makes a quick look. It could be interpreted as relief or regret, which has me making some theories. If Liandrin is trying to purposely hurt Nynaeve, she's achieving her mission. But is it possible that Liandrin doesn't actually want her to go through with it? After what we learned about her having a child, is it possible someone is ransoming this information and getting Liandrin to do things she rather wouldn't do? I guess we'll wait and see, but it feels like a fun moment for the theory crafters. The first segment of her test transports her back to her childhood. She and her family are attacked while she hides. The second segment of her test has her awakening in the Two Rivers. Fever is claiming the life of Tamal Thor. The third segment has her falling through a wormhole in a red dress. She exits the arches and holds Lan's Hidori in a bloody hand. So what does it say about her fears? She can't save her family, and this cuts to the heart of her need to protect. In the second scene, she's accused of abandoning her people. This is a two-pronged fear. Nynaeve is afraid of forsaking her duty to her people of the town, but she also cannot heal Tam. She cannot channel. We then find out Nynaeve actually stayed in the arches with Lan. After Nynaeve doesn't come out of the arches, Liandrin has a powerful display of anger and smashes some pottery. I think she could genuinely be upset. We then move to Perrin and the Shinarans. The Damani goes through the crowd, singling out young girls, and Uno is livid. We hear from High Lady Suroth's voice that the Seanchan are coming back to claim their land as the descendants of Luther Pendrag. I love the accent used for the voice. We know in the books the Seanchan accent is like an American Southern drawl, but this representation of it sounds like the old transatlantic accent from the 40s. And I have to say, if it is, it would be very cool for a fantasy show to bring back a dead accent. It adds a layer of unease. I really love this detail. Uno is eventually murdered for not swearing the Seanchan oaths, and as far as an on-screen death goes, I am glad actor Guy Roberts got to go out in a glorious, brutal manner. Moving on to Rand and Logain, Logain recognizes Rand from Tar Valon. He knows Rand can channel, but he requests help in controlling his abilities. Logain wants wine first, so Rand must procure it. As Rand moves through the foregate, we see a woman getting branded with a symbol of the book chapter icon for the Horn of Valir, and it's great to see another Easter egg. As this is happening, there's a gleeman telling the crowd the legend about the horn, and it's a small detail like this that I really love to see. Rand talks to Selene, and there's a star and moon symbol that hangs above her head, another Easter egg. Back in Tar Valon, Egwene learns that Nynaeve is dead and never came out of the arches as Shiriam snoops through Nynaeve's belongings. Then we move to my favorite location of episode 3, the party within Kyrian proper. Rand is wearing his iconic red coat and Selene looks incredible. The set looks incredible. It's everything I wanted to see, and I hope we eventually come back to this location. I'd love to see more of the political standings and the game of houses. Rand speaks with a mysterious woman whom we know from the casting information plays Moiraine's sister. We learn from her that there's actually a Queen of Kyrian, which is a big change from the books, and I'm curious to see where that leads. Rand gets his wine, and Logain tells him he cannot control his urge to channel. All of that work for nothing. Perrin is in chains in a wagon on his way to Falma, and Ishamael is there. But the wolves come in, and Ishamael doesn't seem surprised. Perrin is freed by Elias, and Ishamael just leaves. I'm still not entirely sure what Ishamael's game plan is here, because he essentially just lets Perrin go. Mat decides not to comfort a crying Egwene and leaves Tar Valon with Min, and we learn Min is working with Liandrin to get Mat out of the tower. We move to Nynaeve's point of view inside the arches, and she has a daughter with Lan. Perrin is there, Mat is dressed as a lord, and he is riding his horse Pips. A Trolloc attack ensues, everyone dies, and Nynaeve exits the arches with her daughter, who disappears in her arms. It's a heartbreaking moment to end the episode. All in all, I think it's a strong finish to the first block of 3 episodes that were released. Everything feels more detailed, and I'm really excited to dig into the latter half of the season. There are only 5 more episodes left, which is bittersweet. I'd love to see what a 10-episode season could look like, but it really feels like they are giving good character development in the allotted time. So let me know what you think. Were there any Easter eggs that you found? Any questions about plot lines and theories you might have? Drop them in the comment section. Like the video and subscribe to the channel for more Wheel of Time content, and I will see you back with more episodes.